Hi, here we are, ready for chapter 5. Trapped. Here's the number 5, and it says trapped. Come on, cried Annie. Jack raced behind her. Were they being followed by that man that said, "Who art thou?" Here, quick! Annie dashed toward a door off the hallway. She pushed the door open. The two of them stumbled into a dark, cold room, and the door creaked shut behind them. "Give me the flashlight," said Annie. Jack handed it to her, and she switched it on. Yikes! A row of knights stood right in front of them. Oh my goodness. Look at all the armor. Look how big it is. Look at how little Annie is compared to the big armor that the knights wear. Let's see. Annie flicked off the light. Silence. "The knights aren't moving," Jack whispered. Annie turned the light back on. "They're just suits," Jack said. "Without any heads," said Annie. "Let me have the flashlight for a second," said Jack, "so I can look in the book." Annie handed him the flashlight. He pulled out the castle book, and he flipped through the pages until he found what he was looking for. Jack put the book away. "This room is called the armory," he said. "It's where all the armor and their weapons are stored." He shined the flashlight around the room. "Oh, man," whispered Jack. The light fell on shiny breastplates, leg plates, and arm plates, on shelves filled with helmets and weapons, on shields and spears and swords and crossbows and clubs and battle axes. There was a noise in the hallway. Voices. "Let's hide," said Annie. "Wait," said Jack. "I've got to check on something first." "Well, hurry up," said Annie. "It'll just take a second," said Jack. "Hold this," and he handed Annie the flashlight. He tried to lift a helmet from a shelf, but it was too heavy. He bent over and dragged the helmet over his head, and the visor slammed shut. Oh, forget it. It was worse than having a 5-year-old on your head. More like having a 10-year-old on your head. Not only could Jack not lift his head, he couldn't see anything either. "Jack!" Annie's voice sounded very far away. "The voices are getting closer. Turn off the flashlight." Jack's voice echoed inside the metal chamber of the helmet. He struggled to get it off, but it was too heavy. Suddenly, he lost his balance and he went crashing into the other pieces of armor. The metal plates and the weapons all clattered to the floor. Jack lay on the floor in the dark. He tried to get up, but his head was too heavy. He heard deep voices. Someone grabbed him by the arm. The next thing he knew, his helmet was yanked off, and he was staring into the blazing light of a fiery torch. Wow. Look at the size of the helmet compared to Jack. Look at, there's his little body. You can see him peeking out. Uh-oh. Ooh, they caught him. Let's see what's going to happen. Chapter 6. Ta-da! So let me explain something real quick. The reason they're using torches is because back in the Middle Ages, there was no electricity. There were no lights you could turn on. There was no heat. There was no switch to turn things on. There was no electricity. So the only way they could see was if they had big torches with fire on them, and they would carry them around and it would light the way. This was way before the time of electricity like we have now. In the torchlight, Jack saw 3 huge men standing over him. One with very squinty eyes held the torch. One with a very red face held Jack. And one with a very long mustache held on to Annie. Annie was kicking and yelling. "Stop," said the one with the very long mustache. "Who art thou?" said the one with the very red face. "Are you spies? Are you foreigners? Are you Egyptians, Romans? Are you Persians?" said the squinty-eyed man. "No, you dummies," said Annie. "Oh, brother," Jack muttered. "Arrest them," said Redface. Arrest them? That's the game you guys play on the playground, and then you put each other in jail. Only they didn't have jails back then. Let's see what they're going to do with them. "Arrest them," said Redface. "To the dungeon," said Squinty Eyes. The guards marched Jack and Annie out of the armory. Jack looked back frantically. Where was his backpack? "Go," said a guard, giving Jack a push. Jack went. Down they marched, down the long, dark hallway. Squinty, Annie, Mustache, Jack, and Red. Down a narrow, winding staircase. Jack heard Annie shouting at the guards. "You dummies! You meanies! We didn't do anything wrong!" The guards laughed. Ha 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 ha! They did not take her seriously at all. At the bottom of the stairs was a big iron door with a bar across it. Squinty pushed the bar off the door, and then he shoved at the door. It creaked open. Jack and Annie were pushed into a cold, clammy room. The fiery torch lit up the dungeon. There were chains hanging from the filthy walls. Water was dripping from the ceiling, making puddles on the stone floor. It was the creepiest place Jack had ever seen. "We'll keep them here until the feast is done. Then we'll turn them over to the king," said Squinty. "He'll know how to take care of the thieves." "There will be a hanging tomorrow," said Mustache. "If the rats don't get them first," said Red, and they all laughed. Ha 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 ha! Jack saw that Annie had his backpack. She was quietly unzipping it. "Come on, let's chain the two of them up," said Squinty, "so they can't get away." The guards started toward them. Just then, Annie whipped out her flashlight. "Ta-da!" she yelled. The guards froze. They stared at the shiny flashlight in her hand, and Annie switched on the light. The guards gasped in fear. They jumped back against the wall. Squinty dropped the torch. It fell into a dirty puddle on the floor. It sputtered and went out. "My magic wand," Annie said, waving the flashlight. "Get down, or I'll wipe you all out." Jack's mouth dropped open. Annie fiercely pointed her light at one and then the other. Each one of them howled and covered their faces like this. They'd never seen a flashlight before. "Down! All of you, get down!" shouted Annie. One by one, the guards lay down on the wet floor. Jack couldn't believe it. There's a picture. Look, they're so scared. They think she has magic because of her flashlight, because they've never seen one before. Ooh. "Come on," Annie said to him. "Let's go." Jack looked at the open doorway. He looked at the guards quaking on the ground. "Hurry," said Annie. In one quick leap, Jack followed her out of the terrible dungeon. Next time we'll read Chapter 7, called A Secret Passageway. She's tricky, that little Annie. She's very brave, isn't she? I wish I was that brave. Anyway, see you next time.